The Great Hall of the Trade Federation Council had stood unchanged for 12,000 years. Its crystalline walls stretched toward a ceiling that displayed real-time economic data from 1,000,000 worlds. Council members from 37 species sat in their designated positions, arranged according to ancient protocols that determined who could speak, when they could speak, and for how long. Every transaction in the galaxy followed the Sacred Commerce Codex, a document so old that no living species remembered who had written it. High Arbiter Keth Vorn of the Silassian race pressed his three-fingered hands together and studied the holographic display before him. The numbers troubled him deeply. For the first time in recorded history, the Federation's controlled markets were experiencing something the Codex had no word for. Trade volumes in the outer sectors had increased by 400% in just 3 cycles. Profit margins that had remained stable for centuries were fluctuating wildly. Species that had never traded with each other were now exchanging goods at an alarming rate. The source of this chaos sat in the visitors' gallery. A small delegation of creatures called humans occupied 5 seats near the back of the chamber. They had arrived in Federation space only 2 years ago, their primitive ships barely capable of faster-than-light travel. The Council had granted them provisional trading rights, expecting them to spend decades learning the proper procedures before conducting any significant commerce. Instead, the humans had done something unprecedented. They had started trading anyway. Captain Miranda Chun represented the Earth Merchant Collective in these halls. She was a woman of medium height with dark hair and eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they observed. Unlike the other species present, she did not wear ceremonial robes or display symbols of her trading guild. She wore a simple business suit and carried a device the humans called a tablet. The Council had summoned her to explain herself. Ships bearing Earth registration were appearing at stations across the Outer Rim, offering goods at prices that made no sense according to the Codex. Worse, other species were accepting these offers. The careful economic balance that had maintained galactic stability was showing cracks. High Arbiter Keth Vorn activated his speaking crystal. The hall fell silent as ancient protocols demanded. He addressed the human delegation with all the formal displeasure he could project through his vocal membranes. Miranda Chen listened to the translator in her ear and smiled. This expression confused the assembled aliens. A smile could mean many things across different species, but in this context, it seemed inappropriate. The High Arbiter had just accused her people of destabilizing galactic commerce. A proper response would involve submission gestures and lengthy apologies. Instead, Miranda stood and asked a simple question. She wanted to know why the Federation maintained fixed prices across all trading sectors. The translator struggled with her casual tone, converting it into something more formal, but the content remained the same. The question caused visible distress among the Council members. Fixed prices were fundamental to the Codex. They prevented exploitation, maintained order, and ensured that every species received fair value for their goods. The system had worked for 12,000 years. Why would anyone question it? Miranda explained that her people had a different approach to commerce. On Earth, prices changed based on supply and demand. If many people wanted something and little of it existed, the price went up. If something was abundant but nobody wanted it, the price went down. This constant adjustment created opportunities for clever traders to profit by moving goods from places of abundance to places of scarcity. Council member Vrethak of the Kethrani Collective interrupted with a hissing sound that indicated confusion. How could anyone plan their economic activity if prices kept changing? How could governments budget for necessary resources? How could species protect themselves from exploitation? Miranda acknowledged these concerns. She explained that humans had developed tools to manage uncertainty. They created contracts that locked in prices for future delivery. They developed insurance against market fluctuations. They built information networks that tracked prices across vast distances in real time. Most importantly, they competed with each other. This last concept required extensive explanation. The Federation operated on principles of assigned trading zones. Each species had exclusive rights to certain goods in certain regions. Competition was forbidden because it led to inefficiency and conflict. The Codex specified exactly which species could trade which commodities and at what prices. Miranda described how human merchants fought for customers by offering better prices, faster delivery, and superior service. Those who failed went out of business. Those who succeeded grew larger and more efficient. This constant struggle for survival made human commerce aggressive and innovative in ways the Federation had never imagined. The Council listened with growing alarm. Everything Miranda described violated the fundamental principles of civilized trade. Competition meant conflict. Changing prices meant chaos. Failure meant suffering. The humans were describing a barbaric system that belonged in the primitive past. Yet the numbers in the holographic display could not be ignored. Outer rim worlds that had stagnated for centuries were now experiencing economic growth. Species that had been locked into unprofitable trading positions were finding new opportunities through human intermediaries. The chaos the Council feared was, by some measures, actually prosperity. A younger council member named Telix of the Varanti spoke next. Her species was among those benefiting from human trade practices. The Varanti manufactured precision instruments that the Codex valued at a standard rate. This rate had been set 8,000 years ago when the Varanti first joined the Federation. Manufacturing costs had dropped significantly since then, but the Codex did not allow price adjustments. The Varanti had been essentially giving away valuable goods for millennia. Human traders had recognized this inefficiency immediately. They offered the Varanti 3 times the Codex rate for their instruments, then resold them to species who actually needed precision tools at prices still below what local suppliers charged. Everyone involved made money. Everyone was happy. Only the Codex was violated. High Arbiter Kethvorin demanded to know how the humans justified this disruption of sacred protocols. The Codex existed for good reasons. Those reasons might be forgotten, but the wisdom of the ancients should not be questioned. Miranda asked permission to share some historical data from Earth. The Council granted this reluctantly. What they saw on the display shocked them. Earth's history included countless examples of controlled economies failing catastrophically. Governments that fixed prices created shortages and black markets. Assigned trading zones became hotbeds of corruption and resentment. The more tightly authorities controlled commerce, the more creative criminals became in circumventing those controls. Human history also showed what happened when markets were allowed to operate freely. Wealth increased for everyone over time. New products and services emerged that nobody had imagined. Mistakes were made and corrected quickly because failed approaches went bankrupt while successful approaches spread. This presentation lasted for several hours. The Council heard about concepts they had never encountered. Credit systems that allowed traders to borrow against future profits. Stock markets that let ordinary citizens invest in commercial ventures. Advertising that informed consumers about available options. Bankruptcy laws that allowed failed traders to start fresh rather than being permanently destroyed. Some council members found these ideas intriguing. Others considered them evidence that humans were dangerously insane. A heated debate erupted that violated numerous speaking protocols. For the first time in centuries, the Great Hall became disorderly. Miranda waited patiently. She had expected this reaction. Earth's representatives had studied the Federation carefully before making their move. They understood that the Codex was not just an economic document. It was a security blanket that protected the galaxy from fears that had accumulated over 12,000 years. The original founders of the Federation had created the Codex to end the commerce wars. Those ancient conflicts had devastated entire species and rendered hundreds of worlds uninhabitable. Strict controls on trade had been the price of peace. Every species alive today had ancestors who remembered the chaos and welcomed the order that replaced it. Miranda respected this history. She did not propose abolishing the Codex overnight. Instead, she suggested a limited experiment. The Federation would designate certain border regions as free trade zones. Human commerce protocols would be permitted in these areas. The results would be monitored carefully. If disaster followed, the experiment could be ended. If prosperity resulted, the zones could be expanded gradually. This proposal split the council. Conservative members saw it as the first step toward galactic catastrophe. Progressive members saw opportunity for growth that the Federation desperately needed. Several species were already trading with humans, regardless of official policy. Acknowledging reality might be wiser than pretending it did not exist. The debate continued for 7 standard days. Delegations returned to their homeworlds for consultations. Emergency sessions convened at all hours. Ancient alliances shifted as species reconsidered their economic positions. Miranda used this time productively. She met privately with representatives from dozens of species, learning their specific concerns and identifying potential partners. She offered customized trading agreements that addressed each species' unique situation. She demonstrated human negotiation techniques that left both parties feeling satisfied. By the time the council reconvened for its final vote, Miranda had already built a coalition of supporters. 17 species formally endorsed the free trade zone proposal. Another 12 expressed willingness to participate without official endorsement. The conservative bloc found itself outnumbered for the first time in generations. High Arbiter Kethvorin cast a deciding vote in favor of the experiment. His reasoning surprised everyone. He acknowledged that the Codex had served the galaxy well, but he also recognized that the galaxy had changed. New species brought new ideas. Clinging to tradition for its own sake was not wisdom but fear. The free trade zones launched 6 months later. The results exceeded even human projections. Trade volumes in the designated regions increased by 800% within the first year. New industries emerged as species discovered they could manufacture goods for markets they had never been permitted to enter. Unemployment dropped across participating worlds as entrepreneurs created businesses that the Codex would never have allowed. Problems emerged as well. Some traders exploited inexperienced species. Price fluctuations caused hardship for those unprepared for uncertainty. Competition led to conflicts that required new legal frameworks to resolve. The humans had anticipated these challenges and worked with Federation authorities to address them. Over the following decades, the free trade zones expanded steadily. The Codex was not abolished but was gradually amended to incorporate human concepts. Fixed prices gave way to price ranges. Exclusive trading zones became preferred trading zones with exceptions allowed. Competition remained regulated but was no longer forbidden. The Trade Federation restructured itself around these new realities. The Council transformed from a regulatory body into an arbitration body, settling disputes rather than controlling markets. New institutions emerged to provide the information and security that free commerce required. Ancient species found new purposes in this changing galaxy. Miranda Chun returned to Earth as a hero. She had accomplished what diplomats and soldiers could not. She had changed the galaxy through commerce. Her methods spread to other human endeavors, teaching alien species that the small, primitive newcomers from the Outer Arm had wisdom worth learning. The galaxy never forgot the lesson that humans taught in those halls. Sometimes the greatest strength was not military power or ancient knowledge. Sometimes it was simply the willingness to try something new, to accept uncertainty, and to trust that competition could create cooperation. The humans had seen what the old species had forgotten. Trade was not a zero-sum game where one side's gain meant another's loss. Trade was a creative act that made everyone richer together. 12,000 years of stagnation ended because a few humans asked uncomfortable questions and refused to accept answers that made no sense. The galaxy entered a new era of growth and innovation. Species that had stagnated for millennia discovered new purposes and new possibilities. And in the Great Hall of the Trade Federation Council, the crystalline walls now displayed markets in constant motion, prices rising and falling, wealth flowing freely between the stars. The Sacred Commerce Codex remained on display in the Council's museum, honored as a historical artifact from a simpler time. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to remember what had been, and to appreciate how far they had come. They left understanding that change was not the enemy of civilization. Change was its lifeblood. And sometimes change arrived in the form of small, fragile creatures who refused to accept that the universe could not be improved.